Okay. Well, we cut that one a little on the tight side in case you hadn't noticed. Just waiting for things to kick into gear here. And trying to get other things sorted out. What the heck is that? Don't mind us. We just picked up a lapel mic to see if that works a little better. We'll figure it out. Okay, let's see if we can get involved in this properly. Refresh that. And what do we got? Oh, there we go. That's what I wanted. Okay. And of course, our computer is going to do stupid things today. There. And where's the button? Don't you just love computers the way they don't work cooperatively for me? Yeah, it was a terrible thing this morning. Got up, went to make porridge for breakfast, and then found out after I got it all made that I didn't have any milk. So we didn't get porridge for breakfast. Oh well. And now if we close that, we can actually see what's being written. Okay, now this is a new one. I'm actually in the room after other people. So we have, what do we got here? Oh, there we go. Well, don't need that because that just confuses us. I do not need the mic on my feed. Okay, who do we got here? Lawrence, glad you made it. Looks like you're first through the block even before I got here. And Marilena, good. And I guess in your case it's good afternoon, which puts you probably on the other side of the world. So things got a little entertaining around here. And the reason I decided to go with the energy thing is because so many people out there, energy healing is something that a lot of people work with. What most people don't realize is it is not something that people have to have, that they've got to go to somebody else for. 1700. Okay, well, that makes sense. In fact, you're putting it that way. I know I grew up in the military, and we used to just call it 1700. The PM is just a kind of a transition. But yeah, let's see if we're. Well, you got to be either over in Europe or down in Australia, I take it. Yeah, because because it's 8 o'clock here, so you're 9 hours ahead. So you got to be in either Eastern Europe or Australia itself. Africa, same idea. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know it's a different continent. I used to have a friend that I went to college with from South Africa, and he eventually decided he was going to go home. And I asked him because he was doing really good, and I says, now bear in mind this was back in the 80s, right? And I asked him, I said, why pray tell are you going? Why are you going home? And he says, honestly, he said, I love it here. I just can't get used to going to school without an M16 wrapped under my arm. And I'm thinking, and like I told him, I said, it's sad that that's what makes you comfortable. Right. But, all the best. Hopefully it's not that bad anymore. But if society doesn't seem to get the message that you don't have to do that. I'm looking at this, and by the way, my monitor's there. If you're wondering what I'm looking at, I'm looking over here at the monitor that's a little closer to me so I can see it. That's unfortunate. Around here, this is one of the nice things about where I'm living. We had the cops show up on our doorstep. Well, more to the point, on the apartment doorstep, but just a few days ago, right? It's like 2 o'clock in the morning and the cops are looking through the window, but don't read that the wrong way. My son was up. It was like, 2 o'clock in the morning sort of thing. My son was still up and had the light on. So the cops knew that somebody was awake and we're on the ground floor. So my son comes down and goes, Dad, somebody's outside with a flashlight. He goes, I think it's the police. So, of course, I quickly got dressed and came out front. Well, we can learn, but we have to start remembering. I mean, I agree with you there, Lawrence. You think back to the Beatles, right? Give peace a chance. Or you talk about, or you think back to Robin Williams, the comedian, and he said, there are thousands of plans for peace and no action. What we have to realize is that action starts with the individual. I got asked a question, I've been asked all sorts of bizarre questions over the years. Not the least of which is understanding that my other half happens to be just absolutely blind. I mentioned that I had that she was, that this was her situation. And this guy a little older than me. Good morning, JCL. Glad you could join us. I mentioned that she was totally blind, and the guy looks in, and he's a little older than I am, and he goes, why would you burden yourself with a partner like that? You're just setting yourself up to be a caretaker. And I'm looking at it going, you've never met a blind person, have you? There are those that will sit in the back and expect everybody to do things for them. But then there are people that are fully sighted that do the exact same thing. So, I mean, from my standpoint, it's a pretty cut and dried little problem. I figured she'd make a good partner. And besides that, frankly, she sees more than most people I've ever met. But no, I like the way that Mother Teresa put it, where she said, somebody asked her to show up to an anti-war rally. And she, Mother Teresa goes, I will never show up at an anti-war rally. But she goes, if you ever put together a peace rally, I'll be there with bells on. I will move heaven and earth to make it to it. But she said, there is no way I'm ever going to attend an anti-war rally. And this is why I tell people, I'm absolutely behind the people. I have a lot of respect for people that join the military or join first responders in order to protect their families, protect their country. I'm all for it. I question a lot of the upper echelons, the commanders' decisions. But I absolutely am 100% behind people joining to protect their country. The one country leader that I do know of that, from what I gather, pulled a very rare and very interesting stunt. When the president of Austria was offered a chance to take his family and fly out of there, he went, no way, I'm not going because my people are here. I'm going to fight with them. Right. Now, from my standpoint, that's a sign of a leader that is taking his leadership responsibility properly. Okay. But I absolutely agree with you, Lawrence. Living in peace really boils down to accepting a couple of things. Okay. Number one, we are all equal. And this is where the healing really has to start, is right here. Well, technically it starts in the upper stratosphere, up in the etheric plane. Comes down to the mind where you get this thought sorted around. But until that thought becomes a heartfelt imperative, people don't do anything with it. Not on the whole. Okay. But when you get that heartfelt thought that it's an imperative thing, it's something that we've got to do, that's when people start looking at it. Okay. I mean, you take a look at doctors saying, oh, you've got to stop this. Okay. Or because your health relies on it. It's the same as individuals going, we've got to stop war. Okay, because our society lives on it. Okay, it relies on it. We've got to stop greed. Now, I had a conversation with a young lad the other day, and he was berating himself for starting to develop a greedy side. So we are working on that with him because, well, frankly, he found it to be a problem for him. Would that the rest of the world would come to the realization that greed is not going to help. We can go all the way back to ancient Egypt. Right. In ancient Egypt, the upper echelon thought that they could take the stuff with them. So they collect all their gear and they put it in their tomb with them, including many of the slaves, because they figured they deserved to have slaves with them in the afterlife. Well, the sad part is we can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that that doesn't work. No matter how much money you've got, you're not taking it with you. Because the pharaohs and what have you that got themselves entombed with their gear, they're dead. At least I hope they're dead. But their stuff is still all here. Okay. Which is why I tell people the material world does not matter. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like my luxuries. Okay, I absolutely like my luxuries. One other thing that I finally managed to do, because they finally loosened up flight restrictions. Okay, and I didn't think I was going to be able to make it, but my 40th grad reunion is coming up at the end of the month. Because they finally relinquished the real stringent flight restrictions, at least inside BC, which is where I live. I was actually able to book the time to actually attend my 40th. Right. Now the thing with my 40th, and I went to the 30th, and I really wanted to go to this one. The 30th was sort of a whim, but I really wanted to go to this one because, well, the 30th felt really like they literally welcomed me as though I'd never gone, which was weird. Right. But when I was going to graduate, I was telling people I was going to publish. And of course, the school that I went to knew that the English teacher had talked to me, had told me right in front of the whole class that I would end up making my money writing. Right. Well, that's where this all came about. This is the first one of the whole pile of them. Two of them are in print. We're over halfway done writing the third one. We're behind schedule on it, but I've started the editing on it now. As far as the final one goes, that we're aiming at the end of the year at the end of this year. So I really wanted to be able to go down there. Well, it was essentially last minute, so it's costing me a little more than I'd like. But at least I'm going to be able to make it. Now, here's the thing with healing. Okay. I'm sure I cannot call myself a Reiki master. Can't do that at all because, frankly, I've never been trained. Okay, and for me, the reality is I've got Reiki masters that will come to me. Reiki masters, I've got witches that come to me for guidance on how to accelerate healing properly. Because, well, the long and the short of it was, and you can't see it here, but I've got a scar that runs about that long. Okay, I snapped the fibia. Or rather, I snapped the radius. Okay, and when I snapped it so badly they had to bolt it back together. I was told I'd be 4.5 to 6 months before it even started to heal. Well, the reality was that by working with the energy the way that I figured out how to do it and how I remembered how to do it, when I broke the arm at approximately 7 o'clock in the morning on March 3rd of 2004, I snapped it. By 7 o'clock that evening, I was out of the operating room with the arm bolted back together. But on the 12th of March of 2004, 9 days later, when I went back to the hospital to get the bandage from the operation changed, I'd already healed the bone. So from that standpoint, do I know how to pick up healing in a hurry? The answer is yes. But the trick is this, and we'll start with how most people think energy works. And this may sound familiar to you. Okay, when you're dealing with Reiki or virtually every form of healing that I know of, somebody's car needs help outside. When you're drawing energy, you draw it in through the crown chakra, down through the heart chakra, and then you redirect it to come out through the hands so you can point it wherever you desire. Now, if you haven't done this before, I did this a couple of weeks back. If you take your hands and just put them about a 1/4 inch apart, right, you'll feel some sort of energy running between them. Now, how you want to call and what you want to call the sensation is up to you. Okay. But that energy, you might feel heat, you might feel pressure, you may feel kind of a vibratory sensation. The important factor is whether you feel anything. Okay. And all you do, because you don't have to actually understand the logistics behind what your illness is. Okay, what's wrong? Your body already knows what's wrong. So you just have to simply focus on one word: heal. Okay. Now, if you picture of course, most professional healers, and I am referring to so-called New Age, which, by the way, are a lot older than the modern methods. But most of them that I've talked to find after a healing session that they're really drained. Well, here's why. Okay, picture it like a pipe or a straw. Picture yourself as a pipe or a straw. The energy comes in, goes down through your system, through the heart chakra, through all the twists and turns and the elbows, until it gets out your hands. All energy will leave some sort of a deposit. Well, just like your arteries. Okay, your blood goes through them and twists and turns and leaves little bits of deposit. Okay, and if you don't cleanse the arteries, if you don't clean out the pipes, they will block up until the point where there is a massive problem. Okay, and the energy no longer flows. This is why people feel tired. Okay, and that's why they require cleansing. Okay, but if you take a straw and you've got a flow of water, you take a straw or a pipe and you set it in that flow of water. Okay, and then you move the straw around so that you can see where it's going. Okay, tilt that down a little so you can see where it's moving. You move your arm to put it where you will. There will be a buildup inside the straw. Okay, inside the pipe that will clog it, and you'll have to go through, call in a plumber or whatever and clean it out. However, if you take a steel rod, the way I work with it is I stand there and I draw the energy down over the crown, around the body. And who do we got? I think we just got somebody else in here. Did we not? No. We are currently, nice to see, we are up to 6 people in the room. Quite happy about that, frankly. But picture the water and the energy coming down over you. I draw it down onto my head, okay, to the crown chakra, and I pull it around my body, okay, and then redirect with my hands. Well, if you take a steel rod and you do that, and you can test this for yourself. I mean, heck, don't bother with a steel rod. Take a pencil, stick it into the water will run down the outside, and you can redirect it where you will and get it to go where you feel it's necessary. Okay, by doing that, what ends up happening is it will end up with a buildup still. But no matter how much it builds up, the water will still flow over it without any effort. Okay, and once it does that, now you can redirect it, but when you're done, yes, you may have a buildup around the outside. And yes, it still would be wise to clear it off eventually, but it won't restrict the energy flow, and therefore it will not restrict, it will not wear you out. Now, the ironic part of this is, like I said, I cannot be called a Reiki master. I have never been trained. I don't know the first thing about their sigils, and the methods. Now, don't get me wrong, Reiki works. Okay, and I'll tell you, doctors do their job usually, and we won't get into my personal opinion about doctors. But then, in all fairness, they really don't have a prayer of keeping up with my healing rate. They already know this. Okay. I mean, you think about it. They diagnosed me dead at 5 years old. I didn't agree, so I left. But when you're working with energy, that's the first thing you look at, is it doesn't have to go through your body. Now, I started the same way most people, where I would absorb the illness from somebody else and let my own healing rate take care of it. Not necessarily the wisest idea. It worked, but it's certainly not the best move. Okay, you'll notice that animals have a natural sense of when somebody's hurting, and they will go right to the wound, okay, and try and help with it. You can do exactly the same thing, contrary to popular belief, and never mind the metaphors and what have you, but humans are, on the whole, animals. Okay, you got 3 classifications that I'm working with: animal, vegetable, mineral. Now, granted, a staggering number of people that I know fall more under the category of being a vegetable, considering the way they seem to think. But when you take a look at it, okay, you do have the capacity to sense when somebody's hurting, to sense when there is a problem, and you do have the capacity to heal. Now, I asked a priest one day, a Roman Catholic, a Protestant chaplain, actually, and I asked him point blank. I said, I understand the whole thing that, if somebody comes to you and you take them in and inside the church, you can sit there and you pray over them and you ask God for their healing, and that works fine. I understand how you see that. But I says, what happens if the same priest, without his garb, is just dressed in street clothes, what if that same priest takes a wounded child and sits down on the doorstep of the church and prays silently to them to let God heal this child? Is that acceptable? And the guy looks at me and he never even blinks. He goes, that's sacrilegious. I says, how is that possible? Is it not the same person? He goes, it just is. That's just the reality of it. I went, okay. I said, well, it seems a little bit complicated, but what the heck? Now, I don't know what your guys' take is on it. Okay, from my standpoint, I know full well that healing can be transferred. The reason I know this is because way back, and I think I mentioned this to people somewhere along the way, my former father-in-law, while I was still married, okay, he ended up in a coma. The doctor, he'd been in a coma for 6 weeks, and the doctors flat out told him, told the family, come in, say your goodbyes, he's done. Well, I brought my wife down, and after everybody had said their goodbyes, my former mother-in-law came to me in the hospital and says, look, I understand you do things a little differently. Is there anything you can do for my husband? Because I just don't desire to bury him at this point. And I looked at her and I says, I'm not going to make any promises, but I'll do what I can. So I went in and worked on him for about half an hour, for probably a couple hours. And then I went home for the night. Now, he had been completely non-responsive for 6 weeks, which is why the doctor said, scrap it. Right, he had dropped into a coma. So I did what I could. That following morning, we came back in, and about 11 o'clock in the morning, the man sits up in bed, like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, sits up in bed, and all he said was he was hungry. And the only thing he had lost was he didn't realize it had been 6 weeks. Right. Now, he had only been given originally a 20% chance of survival and a 5% chance of that, of actually recovering from it. As it, well, that didn't work. As it turned out, he did eventually die 17 years later. Of which, if I recall correctly, he died of old age. But we're talking 17 years down the road. Okay, so is it transferable? Yes. Okay, I had the same sort of situation with another client that was brought to me that was told, we know you're 17, but we're sorry, you're in a wheelchair for life. So her mom brought her to me. And even the kid tells me, I don't believe you can do anything, but I'm here because mom thinks you can. So I worked on her for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. I says, okay, stand up. Right? She looks at me and she goes, I can't stand up. I says, how about if we don't talk about what you can't do and you just stand up? If your legs work, great. If they don't, you're sitting in the wheelchair. Well, she put the effort in and she stands up. So I worked on her for a couple more days and we got her out of the wheelchair. Right, I ran into her a year later. She was on a cane. She had not even sat in the wheelchair in over a year. Right, this is why I say what I'm talking about can be done. It can be transferred. Okay, you can remember how to do it yourself. And this is why I talk about, and this is why when I came into the idea of trying to do this particular session, I would focus on what you're capable of actually doing, what you may have been taught you're not able to do. There's very little on this planet that you cannot do. Fair chunk I wouldn't recommend. Of course, in all fairness, I wouldn't recommend skydiving. But then I can't figure out a rational reason to get out of a perfectly good aircraft. I'm pretty patient that way. I don't travel well, but I figure, the plane will eventually land. And if there's no emergency, take your time, let it get there. Okay. Because, like I tell people, look, if there is an emergency, strap a parachute on my back and shove me out the door. And it'd be really appreciated if you pull the ripcord on the way. Just to ensure that I can actually do it. And I'll take my chances at that point. But if there's no emergency, let me come down. Okay, I'll land with the plane. Hopefully in one piece, but hey, what the heck? I asked somebody, why would you bother skydiving? And they went, well, the rush of it. I says, 6.5 years old, I was picked up by a tornado. Well, picked up by a twister. And I'm halfway up a telephone pole. And I'm thinking, I had enough of a rush there. I don't need to go skydiving. But when you're talking about healing, the biggest miscalculation people face is that first and foremost, they need to know specifically what the medical problem is. That's the biggest miscalculation. Now, do understand, this is stuff to be done in tandem with regular doctors if you're seeing a regular doctor. Okay. This is not a question of, I can do this myself. I'm going to stay away from it. I'm not going to a doctor. Understand, when I snapped my arm, the first thing I did was turned around and headed for a doctor, albeit in a different city. There was no way I was going to the hospital in my city. Okay. I mean, at the time, it was ranked as the third worst hospital in the country. Third worst emergency room. And, in the country. So there was no way I was going to this one. But I did go to the nearest one in another city I could get to get them to bolt my arm back in place. So when I'm talking about accelerated healing, this is in tandem with other methods. Okay. Mine is not the only one that works. There are all sorts of things. Okay. You've got Reiki, you've got pranic healing, you've got, healing by touch. Princess Denali, good morning. Glad you could make it. You don't have to know what the physical problem is. Scientists require knowledge and they require the test to verify. Your body already knows what's wrong. Your body's already figured it out. And that is the biggest issue. Question for you people. This is going to sound right out of left field. But for those of you that, and I think everyone in the chat room that I'm looking at the names for right now, you've already been here. Now I just picked up this lapel mic. What I'm curious of is it, do you notice a difference between having it and having the and having it on and having the whatchamacallit, and having no mic? Of course, it didn't dawn on me to double check and make sure this was working before, I don't think. Okay, I'm an idiot. Well, you're not going to notice the difference. I did pick up a mic, but since I didn't think to check it, yeah, this is what's called a complete oversight. See this funny little thing? That should be stuck in the computer. I'm guessing the mic isn't working that well right now. But I had problems with it the other day because it shut things down. So apparently, this isn't going to do a lot of good. As I said, technology and I do not get along well. So, I mean, yeah. Unfortunately, I never claimed to be really good with technology. But that's okay. At least I do have the mic now, which is a step up. We got it working the other day using Skype, but it shut down the whole system. And I had to talk to my other half. And this is really a question. Well, I'm glad to hear that, Denali. And not that you go through that, but this is really a question for me of the blind leading the blind. My other half is completely blind, and yet she could walk me through the technological setup to make the mic work. But the biggest miscalculation people make is thinking you have to know what the energy, what is wrong with your body. Your body already knows it. Okay. Now, when you take your hands and you put them close together, you can feel that energy. Now, you concentrate on that so that when you concentrate on that energy, on building that, and as you can feel it getting stronger, you just separate your hands. Okay. And eventually, if I tilt that down just a fraction here, you started out only the 1/4 inch apart, and you separate it until such time as you can place it over the damaged area. Now, in my case, this is the knee that buckles while I'm standing there. Heck, I've had it buckle while I'm sitting down. But you separate your hands just enough. Okay, you feel that energy building. And then once it's wide enough, you slowly bring it down over top of one on either side of the damage. Okay. And you concentrate on it so you can still feel it even with the wounded part in between it. Okay. You'll still feel the energy pressure between. You stay focused on that idea of heal, and it will accelerate the healing of your body. Okay, that's the neat part about it. This is something that even a child can do, but this is done in tandem with other techniques. Okay, I've learned a lot of things over the years. Of course, I'm ancient. I feel like it anyway. The nice part about it is once you get through your head that you're actually capable of healing, of accelerating your own healing. Okay, I was talking to one person. There's a lot of new doctors out there, of the new medical, what I call so-called professionals, that will tell you losing weight doesn't work. You cannot drop weight. by just diet and exercise. It doesn't work. We know this. Well, that's, I'm living proof. Again, not necessarily a great example. When you put your mind to things, you can accomplish pretty much everything. There's very little you cannot do. But the trick is to take that belief, that belief right here, that you yourself can heal, that you absolutely use the assistance of doctors. Also, it's kind of like I use a cane when I'm walking. Can I heal my leg? Certainly. But at this point, it's low on the priority. I've learned to live with it. I'm, 59 years old. Right. And therefore, for the last 47 years, I've been walking around with a cane. So you just kind of get used to it. So it's not a high priority for me. That's I agree with you there, Denali. My whole exercise routine takes me about 7 minutes in the morning. Eventually, when I get into weight training, it'll be taking me about 10. And that's it. I am not going to this routine of counting calories. I don't go to the routine of, let's build on massive muscle building. I'm just not that interested. Good morning, Carl. How you doing? The thing with healing is, first and foremost, you have to believe it is possible. That is the first thing you've got to get through your head. Okay. It is not a question of doctors are not necessary, just like it's not a question of a mechanic or a construction worker is not necessary. You can learn to do these things with their guidance, with their help, or you can do it on your own. Okay. But the nice part about it is that, when you think about it, one of the healing things I had to go through was figuring out how to actually talk to people. And, much as I'm not going to use his name, the person that actually is responsible for my being here at all, talking to anybody, was at one point. Now, bear in mind, I am very much a pacifist. Okay, it takes a lot for me to get mad. Now, it does not take a lot for me to imagine violence. If it did, there is no way that I would have written this. Because much as it has a storyline, it has a lot of graphic violence in it. Absolutely, their clout. Edgar Casey could. He was known as the Sleeping Prophet. And he would spot things right to the point of, I remember one case where they were trying to figure out what had poisoned this woman. And he went to sleep and he wakes up and he gives the exact location of a blue bottle. Okay. And it was hidden behind it was hidden behind some books on the bookshelf. Right. I'm just reading what Denali has written here. Did you know that the first treadmill was designed for prisoners to wear them out so they would be more compliant? The answer to your question there, Denali, is no. But it doesn't surprise me. Now it's considered an exercise routine. And a very fundamental point. Okay, and I do agree with him. You put them on a treadmill, it's going to wear people out. The neat point about that is, I know there's one prison, I forget which state it's in, but the guy has been, the warden is, when I heard about him about 15 years ago, so he may not be there anymore, but it was in one of the desert states, and he followed the law of the letter, the letter of the law to the T, right? He had to give people shelter. Now, bear in mind, it was a desert state, so I don't know which one it was. I think Arizona, but I may well be mistaken there. But he'd give them shelter. He put them in bivouacs. He gave them food. Military sea rations 3 times a day. He gave them exercise. Okay, put them on chain gang. Okay, and he gave them clothing. Pink coveralls. At the time, they had the lowest repeat offending, repeat offenders. Arizona, thank you so much, Denali. See, this is why I say I don't know everything by any functional stretch. Okay. But, I mean, as my understanding was, they had the lowest repeat offender rate in the country. And my understanding is the reason for that is nobody wanted to live in a bivouac, eat military rations, and work on a chain gang in pink jumpsuits out in the open. Okay, especially the people that consider themselves really macho. I'm a tough guy. I shouldn't have, I belong dressed in proper, work clothes and jeans, and all of this. You put pink jumpsuits on them, they get really, really edgy. So nobody wanted to go back. In today's world, most of the so-called prisons are more like spas. I know up here there was a comment made that we should take all the senior citizens in retirement centers and put them in jail and put all the prisoners in old age homes because they get better medical in prison than they do in the old age home. Now, this is just patently wrong, in my opinion. But when you're talking about healing yourself, okay, I got really upset with myself the other day because I'm aiming at dropping below 200. So 2 days ago, I checked my weight, and I'd been sitting a little too sedentary, apparently, and I was back up to 208. Right. Well, I decided, nope, not going to handle that. I'm heading southbound. Checked this morning, and I'm under 205. Okay. Again, this boils down to belief in the idea that you can do this. It does not require, in most cases, it doesn't require extra medical procedures and what have you. There are many times, especially when weight gets way oversized, it becomes an issue of medical intervention is absolutely an imperative thing because it's time restriction. When you're dropping your own weight, when you're healing your own body, it's going to take time. And sometimes people have let their body go to the point that it's just not safe to take that time. I target losing a pound to a pound and a half a week. Now, the fact I've lost over 3 in 2 days says I'm doing it a little quick, but I was down to 201.2. And then all of a sudden I shoot back up. Not a happy camper. Okay. And that is very much the case there, Denali. Some of the points where you can see that happen is and there are other circumstances, but these contribute to them. Okay. The stroke that I had back in 2018 was because I bottled everything. I kept all of my stress inside me. And eventually my body just wouldn't take it anymore. Okay, so what ended up happening, is when you bottle it up, you have a high probability of a stroke coming on. When you're having problems with your back, with your lower back, more often than not, somebody around you has really crossed you and essentially stabbed you in the back. If your shoulders are always tied up in knots, the odds are very good that the problem is that you're carrying around too much weight. You're carrying around too much stress that you don't have to be carrying on your own. See, Carl, you're using gematria, and I'm going to have to actually get into that within the next week or two here. When you're talking about using gematria, the way I pick out winning horses is I take a look at the printed list of them. I just check off the ones that are written in bold. Now the reality is I don't gamble. Okay, I've been in a casino 9 times in my life, 8 of which I came out with more money than I went in with. Okay. But it still boils down to when you're looking at getting your head straightened around, gambling, the reality is that healing takes place here. It does not take place in the material world, but I will tell you this. When you turn around and you get the clutter out of the area so the energy can run more smoothly, you will feel better. One of the best cure for depression that I've ever come across, okay, is not medication. Medication is a coping method. And before we go down that road too terribly far, the whole idea, the whole idea behind medication is it helps you cope. Many people have turned to, they claim they use alcohol because of the stress. They use the alcohol to help them cope. Well, here's the sad reality of alcohol. All it effectively does is it knocks out your trained and learned inhibitors, meaning it actually takes out your ability to cope. Okay, when you realize that, okay, the one thing I found that works like an absolute charm for healing and for breaking depression is find the fastest dance-based music you can find. Okay, and say, and crank it as high as socially acceptable. The increase in that mood, in that music, will bring your sense of self up. It'll break that depression and get you moving. Now, this is not promoted as a healing technique because it doesn't make money. I mean, it makes money for the music industry, but the doctors, quite frankly, are not going to make a plug nickel on it. Myself, I've been dealing in the consulting field since I was 10. Okay, and the best thing I ever did with people, is work with them long enough that I never hear from them again. Don't take that wrong. Anybody that's listening that I have helped, don't take that as though I don't want to hear that you're doing well. It's just, if I'm doing my job right, then you're actually healing. And again, and I know I've said this a couple of times, but that was the whole point, is when you take your hands, everybody has the healing energy in them, okay, and is transferable. See, ultimately, when we look at the scientific method of it, okay, the cell structure is comprised of atoms. And we go back to basic science. And I don't know, in all fairness, if this is physics or if it's chemistry. But when we're talking about neutrons, protons, and electrons, okay, the intriguing part of it is that electrons, when they move, you take a hydrogen atom, okay, it's got one electron, right? When it breaks off, and they do it on their own accord, I don't think there's any functional, schedule that it happens. But when that one electron leaves a hydrogen atom, the hydrogen atom that was there becomes the null space between atoms. That lone electron now connects with another hydrogen atom, and now it's got two. Therefore, we've now got a helium atom. Well, cell structures are built from multiple different types of atoms, so they're constantly changing anyway. When you put your hands together and you focus on that word heal, what you're doing is modifying the energy flow to adjust to the damage in your body that your body already knows where that damage is. Okay, your body already knows what's going on. You don't have to understand it. Okay, I can tell you why wearing glasses actually damages your eyes. Now, I wear glasses, absolutely, and I will continue doing so until such time as I don't require them. But it used to be that if I held my glasses right there, I could not physically see my glasses. Okay, there was a comment back during the Civil War. Don't fire lads until you can see the whites of their eyes. Well, that's a great idea, but with my eyes the way they were, I'd have stabbed the person not knowing about it before I pulled the trigger. Okay, now I could feel them, but at this point, I can see all the way. I can see my glasses across the room, but that's because I learned how by modifying the way I was understanding things. Okay, that I could actually correct my own eyesight. Now, it's not perfect. It is at this point, 2020. If I've got a book in my hand, I can hold it at a normal level. I can open it up and I can read it. It used to be I couldn't read the big print here. Okay, that big print, I couldn't read that without my glasses. Okay, so I'm just going to sidetrack on that. For those of you that wear glasses, here's the thing. The reason you're told your eyes collapse, and I am no optician. I did take a course in optics when I was a kid, when I was still in school, which is really funny when you think they diagnosed me mentally retarded. But they diagnosed me mentally retarded, and then in grade 8, they threw me into meteorology, optics, and theoretical genetics. Not bad for being mentally retarded, so I confused them really badly and turned around and graduated on the honor roll. But here's the thing with the way your eyes work. Okay, and again, this is in conjunction with the ophthalmological. I don't know if that's the right word, probably not, but with the eye doctors and the technician and the technicians. But your eyes, when you move around, your eyes will instinctively adjust to the new distances and what have you. So if you don't wear glasses, you may be really foggy at a distance. But the trick is this. Okay, you take a look, and again, I mean, this is just my world. Tarot cards, yes, I do work with them. The important part of this is, and you can do it with any sort of card. You can do it with standard playing cards. I got those too. There they are. See, like I said, I absolutely have this neat little thing of all sorts of weird little toys around. But I do like the finer thing. These, to give you an idea, they're not just gold colored. They're actually gold leaf. Okay. But if you're working on getting your eyes to work, you take a look at the black spade. Okay. Hold it as close as you need to see it. And then just focus on the spade itself. Don't worry about the rest of it. And you focus on keeping it clear. And you hold it however close you have to start with. And then you slowly work it out. And when it gets to a point where it's even a little bit foggy, you focus on it again. Maybe bring it back a little so you can see it again until you can get it. Now, at this point, I can clearly see that card at arm's length. Needless to say, this is not a great idea if I'm driving to only have that kind of visibility. The reality is my eyes still do not work well enough to be able to read my speedometer while I'm driving. So taking my glasses off for driving is just a bad idea. Be really entertaining for everybody else, for the other drivers, or frightening. It's kind of like that comment that goes, I really hope that I die in my sleep like my grandmother did, not screaming in terror like the rest of the passengers in her car. Now, before somebody jumps on that brilliant idea, no, my grandmother actually died in her sleep. Quite quietly in her own bed, from what I gather. Okay. But, yeah, absolutely there, Janelle. Yeah, the neat part about it is once you do that, here's why the glasses, when you're told once you're wearing glasses, they will get worse. Here's why. Okay, and this is what the doctors don't tend to tell you. Now, first and foremost, there is a book out there called The Bates Method to Better Eyesight Without Glasses. Somewhere on my computer, I've actually got the ISBN number for it. Okay, but that's the book I use that taught me why eyesight buckles. Okay, normally what happens with the eye is it will adjust. It'll make micro adjustments for to accommodate whatever you're looking at. Hate that. So you turn your head a little and it will adjust for the difference in distance. But the second you take glasses and you put them on in your face, they're already cut to a certain level. Okay. But now it doesn't matter what's happening. When the light hits the glass, okay, it hits the glass at one point, there is an amount of refraction in the lens. I'm not going to go into the science behind that, but it does stay static because the lens doesn't adjust. So what ends up happening is your eye gets focused on that distance, and that's it. So when you take your glasses off, your eyesight's going to be worse. It's no longer got the elasticity. It's no longer got the capacity to adjust. So you've got to get your lenses changed. Now, every now and again, somebody will go in and the doctor will tell you that the focal lens in the glasses is that the focal point is off. The reason for that is because your eyeball naturally over time adjusts its own configuration. So it's no longer looking through that point in your lens. Okay. Net result, you've got to get new glasses. Now, this is fantastic. Hate to tell you this, Denali. The Mayans didn't pop to a new dimension. Did they advance psychologically, mystically speaking? Absolutely. But the reality behind dimensions is until you collect yourself, at least from my understanding, and since I ran with the Mayans centuries back, we did that shortly after we broke away, shortly after the Lemurian Empire collapsed. Now, just remember, Marilena, where it comes to your eyeglasses, where they're required, absolutely keep them. Don't throw them out. Okay. I still use them because I cannot see my monitor here, what I'm seeing back from. Of course, I can't reach the keyboard either. Okay, but keep your glasses handy for when you do require them. Okay, but the less you have to use them, I will tell you, when I started doing that, I couldn't see the TV very well. Okay, so what you do is you stay sitting back from it, wear the glasses if you have to, but understanding there are a lot of shows out there. Good morning, Wallet Moth. Glad you can make it. You know, when you're stopping wearing your glasses, you will find the first week or so, it's probably really fuzzy. Okay, but it will clarify, and you're going to have to experience that yourself. But do not throw your lenses out. As your eyeballs heal, you go to your eye doctor. He will tell you, okay, your eyes are improving. Here's a new lens. Now, the reality is this. Like for me, he told me my eyes were getting worse. It's where it came to distance, which is not surprising. I hadn't been leaving the house. I ended up wearing my glasses way too much. And my distance eyesight was problematic. My close-up wasn't changing. Okay. And like I said, driving without glasses is really entertaining for other people, not a good idea for you. Okay. But absolutely, put your glasses aside as often as you can get away with in safe environments. Okay. If your eyesight is as bad as mine was, well, to be frank, my eyesight was -6 in my right eye and -5 3/4 in my left, or vice versa. I think it was the other way around. Okay, but the reality was the reason it collapsed is I took a trailer hitch to my right eye. Okay, and tore the cornea open. But what you'll find happen is as your eyesight adjusts, you will be able to focus a lot better. Okay, that filing cabinet behind me that's got white, I don't even know what the signs are on it right now because I can't see them from this angle, and besides that, they're behind me. But before my eyes started to heal, I would never have seen those white spots at all. Okay, it just wasn't going to happen. Okay. No, looking at the sun is not a great idea. You know, if you want to stare at the sun, either get an indirect method. You know, I mean, let's face it, the logic there is simple. Welding glasses work good for looking at that kind of bright light. Okay, but it's still not a brilliant idea. I mean, heck, I don't go outside and stare at the bright light without squinting my eyes on occasion. Yeah, that's not a fun way to do it either there. Yeah, Wallet Moth goes, yeah, sorry. Oh, good morning, Cloud. Cloud goes, I normally take trailer hitches to the shin. See, I'm smart. I stay away from trailer hitches now. Of course, I took the trailer hitch to the eyes when I was only going between the summer between grade 7 and grade 8. Yeah, see, I can't go, and there is no way I would touch a welding torch. Right. I mean, I'd pick it up and move it for somebody, but I don't have the eye hand coordination. I tried golfing one year. Right. It took me 5 strokes to tee off. But where it comes, and the nice part about it is all of this is healable. You think about it. I do have a bad leg. There's no question there. But we also know that the damage to the leg, the reason it shuts off, is literally up here. And when I was 20 months old, I took a fever of 108.4 that flash fried the hypothalamus and the hippocampus, essentially separating the brain into 2 parts, which, by the way, is half the reason why I can do so many things at the same time that I do. Okay. So when it comes to healing, I'm taking care of my eyes to the point that I can function without glasses a lot of the time. And the reason, in all fairness, the reason you keep seeing me put them on and take them off is because, number one, I wore them before I actually started to heal them. I'd been wearing glasses for over 40 years. Okay. So it became kind of a habit. The other issue is, of course, I can't see the clock on my computer without them. Like, it just doesn't exist. Well, it does exist, but to see it, I don't even know where it is. Oh, it's over in the corner. That's where you can't find it. It's way over in the corner like yours is, but I can't see the clock at all without my glasses. Put my glasses on, I can see what the time is. I can see what my timer is doing. Okay, but the catch to healing is the belief that it is possible. Okay. Time it's not so much an illusion in my opinion, but it is a reference point. If we didn't have the concept of time, we would not be able to gauge when we would not be able to gauge in the same way when to connect with other people. Now there are races out there are species out there that absolutely do not require a clock. The human body has an internal clock. Mine, I think, got sent out for repair and never returned. But the reality is we use time as a way of saying this is when we'll get and when we can get there. That, and of course, the fact that time is in a lot of ways fear-based. We're worried we're running out of time. Well, we're not. It's like a friend of mine put it. People talk about the end of the world. In all honesty, Cloud, the abilities were not the reason for my original ET contact. The reason for my original ET contact was my last lifetime. Okay, my original this lifetime started last lifetime. Because last lifetime, okay, I was at a crash site where there were alien bodies that were there. Okay, as a matter of fact, you've heard of the Hopi Indian. Well, maybe you've heard of the Hopi Indian. Speak about the and the star people, and the child that was given to them. Well, in a nutshell, I'm the person that gave them that was there that turned the star child over to them. Now, remember, well, you may not. My last lifetime, I was born in approximately I'd have been born in 1898. Okay, by 1914, I was in prison for murder. Okay, I was actually in jail for murder. Okay, maybe I should reset that. In 1914, I ended up going to jail because of assault charges, and I begged the people not to put me in the jail. They did not want me in the jail with the other eight prisoners. Right. I begged them not to put me there, and they told me, look, I don't care, you're 14, you're in here on assault, you're going in the jail. The next morning, I was the only one still breathing. But instead of going to prison, the war was just coming out, so they picked me up and took me off to war. I was one of the most violent people that you could imagine. But in 1947, 1948, there was a starship crash. Okay. On that crash were five on that particular crash were four alien bodies that they found. Two of which died on impact. One died shortly after impact. But the fourth one was taken off into the U.S. government's control into a underground complex. Thing that the U.S. government didn't know is because at the time I was working for the government. No, I do not remember my name. Heck, I have enough trouble remembering my name this lifetime. Okay, but I got to the site and there was a young lady there as well. Okay, the one that was dying shortly after impact had a child. And for whatever reason, she asked me, probably the most violent person you could have known at that point. Okay, she asked me to take her child and protect it. Well, there were a number of Hopi Indians that were on the edge of the crash site, and I had spotted them. So I took the child, and for whatever reason, I took the child and turned it over to the Hopi. I then went back to my work and never said a word to anybody about it. Well, several years later, 1956. 1956, I died in Chicago General Hospital of old age. In 1963, I was born into a small military family here in Canada, here in Comox, BC. Okay. But in 1968, I was reunited with that same child. That was a reptilian child. And I was reintroduced to her. Now, bear in mind, she was a child in 48. So here she would have been a young adult at the time. And she was the one that literally took me to her people after I had been murdered. Okay, after I'd been injected, took me to her people to piece me and to put me back together. Yeah, a 7-year turnaround. I was in a hurry, I guess. I had my whole life planned out quite clearly. Prior to that, let's see, I died in 50. Yeah, I died in 56. 28, 5, let's see, 1828. I was a fisherman up in Northern Ireland. In 1828, in 1833, I died of a broken heart in Northern Ireland, right on the banks overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. Then I came back, and I'd been born I'd been born about 1898, about 65 years later. The average time between lives, from my understanding, Clout, is the average time is approximately 70 years. Okay, but most people, when they come back, they show up on the other side of the planet with total non-recollection of who they were. Okay, it was through this series of lifetimes I came to fully understand that the past life you had, that you lived, has a direct impact on your current life. Okay, but most of us forget it. The answer to your question, yeah. The nice little part you asked, where are we here? Languages. There we are. Yes, and no, I cannot translate them well. I do speak them. But I do know how, and Dave Scott on from Spaced Out Radio was actually, he bore firsthand witness to this. Okay. But I do speak gray, as in Zeta Reticulum. Okay, I speak that. I do speak what I call Pangalactan, which is it is the trade language amongst the different races in the Galactic Consortium. I do know how to speak both Crow and Seagull, which, by the way, are not exactly they aren't exactly off-world languages. Same as I've been known to communicate rather nicely with dogs and cats, for that matter. But these are all just different languages. See, some people will come back real quick. It's very rare that somebody comes back as a relative. I hear tell and tale of it a lot. But the reality is, we're talking, you've got 7.9 billion people now on this planet. So when you hear about one that comes back, like for instance, a grandfather coming back, I'm not debating whether it happens. It's just a very extreme rarity. Okay. And yes, I've used hypnosis myself as well. The easiest way there, Joe, where it comes to how you can tell if you've had a past life. Sometimes you'll be going along doing something, you'll see an old picture or an old picture or an old sign, or maybe you'll talk to somebody that's said to a senior citizen that talks about an event that you remember. Okay, or it might be a movie that triggers it, and you have an emotional reaction that just doesn't add up, or you remember specific things about that event that weren't necessarily broadcast. Okay, I know of one person in particular. The first time they watched the sinking of the Titanic, they had an absolute conniption. They completely broke down watching the event, like watching the event unfold in the movie. Now, this was not something that should have been triggered, that should have happened. If you're just watching watching a movie, it shouldn't have that kind of effect. It might be disheartening because of the song, of the music track. Okay. Now, much as I've heard the name Dolores Cannon, I have no idea what QHHT stands for. Okay. See, the neat part about it is there are many people I've run into that remember off-world lives. But the problem is that they are so tied up in them that they don't relate to this world. Now, I remember off-world lives. Okay, but then on this planet alone, I've documented, I think, 20 lifetimes that I remember on this planet. That's not counting the ones I've remembered on other planets. Okay. Well, I understand the term Guinness and whiskey. That's the easy part. When we're talking, and again, remembering your past lives does have a real important impact. Okay. The more you remember about what you've been through, the more you can understand what you're going through. Okay, because you've had that track record before. This is why some things, when you're doing them, they feel real familiar. It's like, I've been sitting here, I've done this before. I remember sitting down, I was amongst a group of people. Okay, I was down at the local skateboard park, talking to a whole pile of people ranging from 8 years old to 80 years old. And I'm sitting there talking to them. I'm sitting on the mound, right? Because there was a little mound overlooking the skateboard park. So I'm sitting up on this hillock. I've got these people spread out all around me, and I'm talking to me, and I'm thinking to myself, this is way too familiar. Okay. I later, I'm still trying to verify exactly what that was all about. Not to worry, Wallet Moth. The fact you don't recall any does not mean that there's anything wrong. The reality is the massive majority of people don't recall past lives. They don't even, and most of them don't even believe in them. Okay. So what into, eventually you may or may not. It does not make you any better or any worse than anybody else. I will tell you, remembering past lives is a royal pain when you're driving on occasion. Because there are times when I've remembered, I was driving the other day, I literally, like this would be a couple of years back, I was driving my son downtown. And all of a sudden my eyesight just completely screwed up. I was looking at, I knew I was driving, and thank heavens all the roads ended up in the right place. But on the one side of the car, I could see Roman soldiers and with gladiatorial with the chariot races. On the other side, I was looking at rocket-assisted hoverboards. Right. I couldn't see anything in front of me until I turned broadside and looked out the one window. And then I could see out the front and back window, which was great. But it does cause its complications. See, and I do caution one thing there, Denali. Yes, you can have someone else talk you through it. But you've got to be careful because when you're doing a past life regression, which is a definitively beneficial thing where it comes to healing, okay, when you do that, the person's got to be careful what they're saying. They cannot be going, was your skin black? Okay, or was your skin yellow? They have to phrase it in the term of, do you recall a skin color or a skin texture? If so, what was it? They cannot be suggesting anything. Okay, if they don't understand something, they've got to be going, look, I don't understand entirely what you're talking about. Can you be a little more specific, or can you clarify it? Focus a little more and clarify what you're looking at. If they're not doing this, there is a high probability of false memories being built. Okay. For instance, if the difference there is if I tell you, if I say, were you a black person or were you an Oriental? The first thing your brain is going to do is go, that fills in a missing piece. And now you're building a picture of an Oriental. You may have been Irish. You may have been a redheaded, pale white Irish. But the fact that the person has said, were you China, were you Oriental, has completely derailed that picture in most cases. So, from my standpoint, absolutely regression therapy works. But you've got to make certain that you've got somebody that is doing it properly. And there are way too many that will talk about, I'm going to walk you through it. I've seen you as such and such. Now, I've done the same thing on occasion. People will ask me, do you remember any past lives of mine? And I will just pick out what's coming to light, but I won't go into any detail with it. Okay. And the reason for it is I don't desire to open major cans of worms. Okay, I don't desire to have these false memories all over the place. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, Wallet Moth, I found the only one that was trained in England that I ever heard of. The shrink I spent 20 years with was a child psychiatrist, adult psychiatrist, general practitioner. He was a member of the Past Life Regressionist Society and a specialist in alien abductions, as well as a hypnotherapist. And he was trained in London, England. Okay, he just happened to be over here. He had happened to move over here, and I lucked out and got him. Okay, he was the one that opened a lot of doors for me, and he's the one that actually explained the way hypnotherapy can be misused. But are they possible to find? The answer is yes. But you also have to realize that some of this will work. Like I said, if you're watching movies, reading books, these kinds of things can trigger. Okay. I remember a year in like one lifetime where I was a fully controlled telepath. Okay. One of the guy that was on the chain gang with me, because I was a nice person at that point. And I've had a lot of lifetimes where I really was not nice. Matter of fact, it was downright violent in a lot of cases. But one guy that was on the chain gang with me, I met him this lifetime. Okay, we had a really neat discussion regarding the way we broke out of prison. Yeah, we were not content with staying there. We became really good friends early on. Since then, we've lost connection, but that's okay. See, the nice part about past lives is this: when you're striving to, and one of the key factors, one of the things we are here for, and this is why I talk about remembering yourself. We all have bits and pieces of us. Now, the neat part is I've talked about the idea that I write most of my information down. Okay, this series. Now, this one is out. Okay, as is the end of an epoch. Okay, what you're not aware of. Okay, I'm working on the Return to Paradise, which is the third one in this trilogy. But the one that I'm aiming at getting out for the end of next year, for the end of 2023, beginning of 2024, okay, is one that the working title, the likely title, as a matter of fact, it will be the title because I've already got the artwork working on it, is called Where It All Began, which goes back and explains the whole idea of how past lives come about, how soulmates are created, how soul families are created, where your twin flames and your star family comes from. All of that I'm actually covering. Denali, welcome back. Oh, I'm curious if that was my fault. A lot of my current friends, Denali, a lot of my current friends, I burned at the stake way, way back. Because I was a warlock, I actually worked for the for the government. Although I didn't exactly do what they wanted me to do. I did, however, get very wealthy because of it. Well, if we go back 2 generations, Walletmoth, I'm actually from northern. I'm actually from Scotland, but we have to go back several generations to get there. I told one gentleman that came here that he was just visiting from Scotland. And all I did, I was working at a psychic fair. And all I did was I said, "Hi, my name's Keith." And he looked at me and he goes, "Oh, you're a Scotty laddie." I looked at him and I went, "Really?" I said, "Technically, yes." I said, "But actually, I'm second generation Canadian." And he asked me where I hailed from. So I told him, I said, I'm an Andrews, I'm an offshoot of the Ross clan. He goes, "Oh, laddie." He says, "You're not a Scotty, you're not from the Highlands." Because I was always told you that it was. He goes, "No, laddie." He says, "You're from a fucking orbit." I went, "Oh." The thing is, when you remember your past lives, I remember that lifetime. I remember living and being a fisherman in Northern Ireland. And I just found out that another memory of mine, I knew that I was a swordsman way back. I didn't realize how much of one until I talked to a sword master just about a week and a half ago, a modern sword master. And apparently the maneuver that I pulled with a boken when I was in my early 20s, boken is a wooden practice sword, is apparently a master stroke. Now, I'm a pacifist. I do not fight. Okay. So, I mean, I turn around, I look at it this way. All of your memories, everything you desire to do now, the odds are you've done before. Okay. I mean, I remember being a phenomenal sculptor, a phenomenal painter. I've apparently misplaced that information because right now I'm really good at the stick man that fell down the staircase, landed in the carburetor, and then got run over. But, other than that, not so good. Yeah, I'm not entirely. I mean, I remember walking around centuries back in quite literally in Stonehenge. But Stonehenge is not entirely what people think, which is understandable considering they're still trying to figure it out. Okay, but the more you remember about your past, but start with your current past. Take a look at what you're doing right now, what you're content with right at this moment. That's where healing starts. It doesn't start centuries behind you. It starts in the here and now. Okay. And this technique I was talking about, working with your hands, that is only one thing. The other thing about healing, and this is bar none, the best physical energy cleanser I've come across this lifetime. You take a bathtub, fill it with as warm a water as you're comfortable soaking in. Take 4 teaspoons of salt, preferably sea salt, but table salt will work fine. Absolutely do not use Epsom salt. Okay, not for this purpose. Okay, you just put 4 teaspoons of salt and 4 teaspoons of baking soda in the water. That's it. No bubble bath, no essential oils, no water softeners, nothing. And you sit in it for 20 minutes, half an hour. It is the best physical energy cleanser I've come across this lifetime. If you do not have a tub, okay, soaking your feet in water is a viable secondary method. Doesn't work as well for obvious reasons. You're only soaking your feet. Okay, but that is bar none the best method I've come across. And yes, a sun bath works out beautifully. This is the one thing that people forget about where it comes to sunbathing. Okay, is it does work as a cleansing method. However, the reality is most people are not willing, they're not in a position where they can legally, without social ramifications, get dressed like you would for the bathtub. Okay. But that method of that bath has helped an immense number of people in putting the negative past the negative stress behind you. Now, apparently, I just found out talking to a friend of mine who knows a lot about healing. Okay, about nutrition, about healing methods and what have you. And apparently, the reason that an extra bonus to that really hot bath is it will help draw the toxins right out of your system because of it being hot water. Well, the reason, now there's an interesting complication, but doing that in the tub, okay, is great if you're not actually, being in the tub is fine if you're not actually sitting in the water. Because if you're sitting in the water, you're going to end up with that same toxin going straight back into your system. Okay. The idea is not to sit in it. Okay, but you got to remember that at that time, when they were using tubs, okay, way back when tubs were being used, you actually stood in the tub and poured water over you. Okay, and then drained the water out. But you didn't stand in it until your feet were wrinkled either. up, and I am going to have to phone him back. That would be my son. Normally I would pick it up, but I will have to phone him back as soon as I get done here. Because, well, let's face it, that's just the reality of it. But I am going to take a moment out right here and just drop him a quick message. Because, like it or not, for people, it's like I tell people, if I am even in the middle of a consultation, normally I'll take the phone. But the reality is I don't know how to put this thing on pause properly. So I'm not. So I'm just letting him know that I will call him back in half an hour. Because, quite frankly, family is absolutely an absolutely critical issue. And of course, I can't apparently type either. But when and this is why I say your healing has to start in the here and now. See, when you look, you got to remember the issue of getting toxins out of your body. Okay, your toxins will come out through the pores. Okay, but we look at the here and now, because by remembering by looking at immediately what you're happy with, what you're not content with, as you shift away, as you modify the energy flow of what you're not content with. Yeah, the neat part about that. Let's see. Well, that's an interesting. I've never looked into it myself, Denali. This idea of adding peat into your garden. Yes, it's got some nutrients, but you got to remember a lot. Now, the nutrients that your body requires are capped. Some of what your body does not require will end up in your urine. What I'm not entirely certain of is how much of that is beneficial from the plant and from the plant standpoint. But if you think about it, it actually, when you think about it, that's what animals do all the time, and the grass seems to be green enough with animals doing it. That's just the reality of it. That's the reality behind it. Okay, from your standpoint, okay, that nutrient, that waste that comes out of your system, yes, will benefit other parts of the planet. I mean, let's face it, a decaying body helps other denizens of this planet. So I cannot see it causing a problem. Yeah, and you are right. There's no question there, Wallamoth, that it would alter the pH level of the water, but the pH level of water is required at different levels for different things. Humans are not the only ones that have a pH balance that has to be looked at, which is why without the research myself, all I can say is it makes sense that may help. It may, on the flip side, also cause complications, but it's not for me to figure that one out. That is actually quite a normal thing. When I was growing up there, Denali, there were 5 boys in our family, right? And you were just taught, go out behind the barn and don't worry about rushing all the way into the house. No, you're not just being English. It's amazing there, Wallet What you are is so-called civilized. Okay. The problem with modern civilization is people are taught to fear everything. If it sounds a little different, you're supposed to fear it. Okay. And this is one of the biggest complications we have. You were not invited. I've got Spider here looking at me going, hey, what's up? Yeah. Would you mind going back where you came from? What do you think? I do get a fascination on spiders, but I'm not going to let them stay in my house. Mind you, if I did leave my screen and window open, it probably wouldn't let the spiders in that quick. But since it's a little guy that doesn't actually cause a problem, like he's not about to bite me, See, the neat little part about healing is this. You have to really take a look at the issue of why are you holding yourself back. Now, I will tell you, if you've got leg problems, more often than not, if it's not something that is literally you've ended up crippled or something like that, maybe your legs just ache a lot. A lot of the time for that is because you're having trouble letting yourself move forward. Okay. Many times, there's a lot of different correlations. Eyesight, more often than not, is a complication of you don't desire to see what you're looking at. So your eyesight shuts down. It's kind of like people, I've had cases where I've been doing a consultation with somebody, and we'd be recording the thing, and all the way through the session, they're going, "No, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong." At the end of the session, they'll get the first part of the tape that says, "Here's the name and the date that we're doing the session," and then at the end it says, "Hopefully, we hope to see you again," or this sort of thing. Nothing recorded in the middle, because as near as I could piece together, the person that was getting the consultation did not want to hear it. So it just didn't record. Okay. In order to heal, the first step to it is you've got to take responsibility for your own actions, for your own culpability. Every communication gap I've ever dealt with between anybody, myself included, has invariably been a 50-50 problem. Half the person's problem, half yours. That's why they say somewhere between both ends of a question, somewhere halfway between those and those perceptions, is the truth. It absolutely is. Clint's just saying here that acceptance is the first stage of healing. It absolutely is. Well, I appreciate that, Joe. I never considered myself to have much of a sense of humor at all. Although, I don't, there's a t-shirt I saw one day that says, that thing that most people have in their brain that says, "Oh, I shouldn't say that." Yeah, I didn't get one of those. I don't know, maybe mine was on back order. But I usually figure out I shouldn't have said something after I've said it. Right. Which is why I was on the show with Dave one day, and somebody asked me point blank, they asked, "Why should I believe what you say?" Well, I was not really paying attention to any sort of on-air etiquette. And my immediate response was, "Well, what makes you think I care whether you believe me?" And the sad reality of it is, do I care whether people take in the option? The answer is yes. Do I desire to have people bowing down to me and, kissing my feet? No. I had somebody try and do that one day at a psychic fair, just threw me for a loop. But the reality is, all I do is talk about the things I've seen and the things that work for me. Okay. Fortunately, most of them work for other people. I just don't believe in offering tools that only work for one group of people. This is why I tell people, if what I'm saying, if it does not seem to apply to you, do not take it on. Okay. Just don't. Okay. What do we, for me, it's just that kind of a situation. But you've got to look at it and go, this is where we're standing. This is what I know is my responsibility. No, in all fairness, Wallet Moth, healing is not, it is not in separate parts. Okay. The mind and the body are intimately linked. Okay, and so is, by the way, the state of your house. Now, there's a concept that's very accurate, in my opinion, that goes, the state of your house is a reflection of the state of your mind. Okay, well, with that in mind, the state of your mind, the state is also is the state of your house is all in the state of your mind is also a reflection of the state of your house. Okay, so if you've got clutter around you, the odds are your mind is really cluttered, really active, really on the go. But here's the kicker. Try this. Try and change the way you look at the world and see how well that works. If you turn around and you change the layout of your house, if you clear the clutter out of the way, you'll find that you're all of a sudden more energetic. You know, absolutely. You know, Denali's just saying people get feelings when a button is pushed. Well, ultimately the feelings were there; they just recognize them. But you know, when you look at the mind and the body, the mind is it has a direct impact on your body. You know this because the term stress kills is all too accurate and has been proven all too accurate. It was literally bottling my emotions that caused my last stroke and almost caused my second one. I just decided I didn't like the idea, so I overrode it. But healing your house, healing your body, your mind, and your living quarters are all interconnected. They are all reflections of the same thing. Okay, you want you want that sense of depression to disappear. The music is one tool. The other tool is clear the clutter out of your primary relaxation place, usually the bedroom. Okay, unless you're like my father was, who used to sleep a lot of the time in the living room in his latter years. Okay, but you clear the clutter out of the way, the energy will move much more smoothly. Net result, your energy level will climb, your sense of healing will climb. A lot of people end up gaining weight, not because genetically they have no option, but because they just plain don't move. Okay, and it's so much easier, you know, if somebody else can bring you food, you can eat while you're sitting there. Okay, net result, you don't burn calories, you put on weight. Okay, but if you heal all of it at the same time, as it's all interlinked, you'll find you're in far better shape. You know, I mean, I remember watching a number of things happen. For me, it really boiled down to this. My bedroom used to be jam packed of stuff. Okay, because I was a pack rat until I was 56. Now my bedroom has most of the junk out of it. I've got a little stuff I'm still going through, but what's happening is like, well, I've got binders that I'm throwing out the paperwork for. Give you an idea of pack rat. The last set of binders I emptied, last box of files, were from the early 2000s. And we're not talking about old photographs. We're talking about power bills. Okay. It's those sorts of things that are the problem. Okay. That's where you take all that clutter, stop the energy from moving in my house. Net result, I was feeling lethargic, and because I was feeling lethargic, it worked as a beautiful cushion. I didn't want people around me anyway. Okay, this is why I tell people I'm very reclusive. Okay, so of course, when this whole COVID thing came out, you know, they said, you know, put on the mask, and I'm like, don't care about the mask. Because in my opinion, it was simple. You look at a restaurant and they go, no shirt, no shoes, no service, no mask. You know, or more to the point, no shirt, no shoes, no service. Then they came out with the mask, and just for me got shifted to no shirt, no shoes, no mask, no service. So I didn't go there. But the bonus for me was this. They said, stay away from people, stay home, and drink warm liquids. Well, at the time, I had a 30-cup coffee urn at home, and I didn't want to go out of the house anyway. So I'd have to come up with reasons not to go out. This came along and it's like, you don't have to go anywhere. And now I just don't need to give that. I don't need to come up with a reason. Okay. But that enabled me to isolate myself. Now, as it turns out, I ended up isolating myself as a kid. Okay. I remember my parents constantly having the teacher say, hey, look, we can't get Keith to go outside. And I'd be asked why. And it's like, well, the people are all outside. Why would I want to go there? Right. That was why I never skipped out in high school. All the kids were skipping out. I figured if they were skipping out, I could stay in class and people would leave me alone. Didn't work out that way, by the way. I still ended up with people tracking me down. Either because they wanted to bully me or because they wanted answers to where their life was going. But when I talk about everything being connected, okay, even the OTE drive, the oscillator densification, and the tri-transportational equilarity, which is a star drive used by the consortium to travel interstellar distances, it relies on the shockwave created by escaping electrons. Okay, that's what it relies on. And they happen of their own accord. Okay, it's a phenomenal system. If we take a look at anything, it's all interconnected. But it starts with a thought, okay, up in the etheric plane, where your soul gets this idea, this has to heal. That gets passed to the brain, where the brain starts trying to figure it out. But the reality is, until you get that imperative, an emotional imperative, your brain is not likely to act too much on behalf of getting your body healed. Okay. And I will tell you a simple, and I've said this before, where it comes to the energy levels, you start by acknowledging your culpability and accepting the fact that the only thing you've got direct control over fully. I'm completely solidly Joe is just asking if I'm an empath. The answer is yes. I physically feel what the planet is going through. Now, you may know it as Earth. You may know it as Gaia. She told me her name is literally Itza. Okay. And we are physically connected. I can tell when there is an earthquake. I can tell when she's upset. Sometimes I'll get told where the earthquake is, but I certainly know when she's upset. Years ago, and when I'm talking years ago, I was in my mid-teens when I told people there was an earthquake brewing and the epicenter would be, and that there was a massive earthquake brewing where the epicenter would be. You'd start at the coastal border of Oregon and Washington State, go due northwest about 150 miles. Okay. And you will find the epicenter of said massive earthquake. One that's likely to make Hope, like 200 miles inland, look like seaside property. I'd pinned it down then. Turns out that's called the Cascadia fault line. And they are expecting a 10-point plus to come out of that equation, out of that location. Oh, Wallamoth, just to clear that up. Okay, yes. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I was born Ronald Keith Andrews, but on approximately August 1st of 1960, I was born at roughly 2 p.m. on May 13th, 1963. At approximately 4:14 p.m. Well, let's try that again. I was born May 13th, 1963, at approximately 2 p.m. in the afternoon in Richmond, BC. At approximately 4:14 p.m. On August 1st of 1968 in the Neuse Bay on the west coast of Vancouver Island, I was murdered and walked out of the morgue. Okay, up until then, I had been called Ronald. On that day, when I walked out of the morgue, my mom and dad were in each other's arms because the doctor clearly said, "I'm sorry, we lost him." Well, I come out of the morgue and I tugged on Dad's pant leg and I went, "Who'd you lose?" That day, they started calling me Keith. So legally, my first name is still Ronald. Okay. But I go by Keith. And, people have said, what do you prefer being called? Well, I prefer being called something. I mean, I used to be called Cliff by one guy. To me, it doesn't make any difference. I've been called a lot of things over the years. I got called a lot of things over the years, some of which are repeatable in polite company. But it's like I tell people, I will make everybody I meet happy. Some people I make happy by showing up. Most of them I make happy by leaving. But the one thing I won't do to people is I won't lie to you to make you feel better. Okay, unless you ask me to directly. Now, of course, being a science fiction, science fantasy writer, amongst other genres, do I know how to lie? Do I know how to fabricate? Certainly. Okay. The reality of it is, when you're looking at the time, people tell you when they're dealing with astrology that you need to know your time of birth. Well, you really don't. One of the biggest flaws I found with astrology is this. We're talking about planetary movement of literally hundreds of thousands of miles. Now, regardless of where you were born on the planet, okay, you can, regardless of what time of day you were born, okay, you cannot be that far off the beaten track. So if you don't have a time of birth, the functional time is you go down. The one that I use for everybody that I don't have a time of birth for is 6 a.m. Okay. Now, that might be an arbitrary number, but it happens to be the number I was taught when I was learning astrology. And again, astrology is just another method of getting to know who you are. Okay. The best way it was put to me where it came to the astrological natal chart is it gives you an idea of the tools you were born with. It does not tell you what you will be when you get older. That is solidly your choice. The nice part about it is the more you know about you, and realistically, it starts with what you know about you in the here and now. Okay. When you know about who you are, okay, that's where things turn around for the better. Okay, because the more you understand what triggers you, if you know it upsets you, don't do it to somebody else. Because the key factor here is you do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Okay, the reason I find out personally what people's phobias are is not to scare them with it. It's so that I can intercept the problem if it becomes an issue. Okay. Yeah, there's no doubt there. That's one of those. See, I know that my parents ended up originally calling me Ronald. My uncle, I was born the same day my uncle was born. It just happened to be 40 years later. Okay. But the reality of it is that even the numerological configuration of your name is something that changes, that you can change the energy around you by changing your name. So I do caution you to think carefully before changing your name. Legally, it's a pain in the neck anyway. Okay. But what people call you is all that matters. If you were running with, like when I was running with the live psychic fairs, okay, should slap myself in the back of the head on occasion when I get stuck like that. Just like with the old records. They used to, and the people I was running with called me the celestial prophet, simply because of the fact I read everything from the stars to the stones. Didn't matter what it was. Okay, and I still do. The only one I don't tend to read with is I don't read tea leaves. And the reason for that, frankly, is I don't like the flavor of tea. So I don't see the point in dragging it around. See, you're talking about that happening when you were 10 there, Wallet Moth. When I was 10 was when I started helping teenagers, as in 16, 17-year-olds, understand how to make their intimate relationships work. Which is sad when you think I never had a girl. I didn't understand literally how doctors knew what gender a kid was when they were born. It wasn't until I was 12 I figured that out. Okay. And at 23 is when I started working professionally. Gee, I just noticed the video on my one monitor is a whole lot fuzzier, a whole lot less clear than what the video on my laptop is. But the real catch to healing is, like I said, to start with, you've got to accept the fact that it's possible. Okay. It is literally an issue of understanding that your body already knows what is right. Your mind already knows what is working properly for you. Okay. But if you don't accept that that's the point, technically, no, there's nothing wrong with tea. I just don't like the flavor. Okay. And that may well be because I grew up with coffee. I don't know. Maybe if I had grown up with tea, I'd look at it different. I know I looked at my coffee cup really different the other day. I put my hand down at the restaurant. My coffee cup was sitting here. I put my hand on the table. I was just sitting there. And all of a sudden, the coffee cup went all the way across the table and slammed into my hand. I ended up soaking my hand with hot coffee. This is one of those things I haven't since replicated it. But when I was a kid, that would be called psychokinetics, by the way. Take this hand out of the equation. But when you start moving stuff around in the physical world, all you're doing is moving one molecule to the next. It's no different than walking. Okay, thus far I have not got out of my own way, but I'm pretty certain that was caused because of a problem when I was a kid, that disconnect was caused. When you're striving to heal, the catch to it is, like I said, number one, accept the fact it's possible. That's first and foremost. Now, I'm looking at without my glasses on. That picture in front of me is somewhat fuzzy, but I can concentrate for a moment at this point and clarify it reasonably well. I still can't read at that distance, but it boils down to pick one spot that you're looking at. Just concentrate on a little black dot, okay, and just grow that. Focus on that until it's absolutely brilliant crystal. Take if you take a black spot. This is why you take a white card, you take a black spot, and you just paint the middle of it in black, and you just take that one spot. Hold the picture real close. Okay, so all you can see is the black. You can do it with a card. Okay, like this is the king of spades. Okay, and you can do it where you just take the king. Okay, take an ace of spades. You hold it real close to one eye. And you concentrate on it until it becomes clear. And then you move it out a little bit at a time. Constantly re-clarifying it so you can see crisp edges. This is a way of training your eyes. Okay. And most people have a card around them. Okay. Do it with one eye and then do it with the other. Now, I can tell you, I don't need to go to an eye doctor to know that my right eye is stronger than my left because I hold it right there. And it's clear, it's relatively clear. But with my left eye, I've got to get, half again as close. So I don't need an eye doctor to tell me my eyes don't work as well as I'd like. But by focusing on that ace, on that spade, you pull it back and just focusing. If you have to cover one eye with a hand to avoid looking at it, okay, to avoid the other eye kicking in, do so. Okay, especially if you're aiming at dropping on getting rid of your glasses or your contacts. This is in tandem with whatever you're doing. And again, don't go throwing the glasses out. It's kind of like if you break your leg. The fact you desire to be able to walk without a crutch, it's a great idea. But don't throw the crutch away until you can actually walk. Okay, these are just little techniques I personally put to use. Okay. No, fortunately, that's just a shadow, I think. Because I'm looking at. Yeah, Wallet Moth is asking if that's coffee stain on my shirt. No, fortunately, the only place I have coffee stains is possibly in my teeth, and I don't even know about that. They're so shot that's ridiculous. But no, that is probably just a shadow because I'm